We are Southeastern 16 as we are covering SEC football. As bowl games taking place, and one of those features the South Carolina Gamecocks taking on Illinois there in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. And Jordan Kaye joins us now to talk about the Gamecocks. He covers South Carolina football for the state. Jordan, appreciate your time today. What's been a fun season for you covering the Gamecocks?
Yeah, thanks, Chase. It's kind of crazy. I did not anticipate them landing in the Citrus Bowl 4 months ago.
Yeah, and when you look at this team, what do you feel like was kind of the turning point? Now, I know that we saw them go out and get a big win over Kentucky, and that really opened my eyes. Hey, this could be a good South Carolina team. For you, what was kind of the turning point where you said, okay, this team's legit. They could make a run at it?
I think it's the comeback against Alabama in the second half. They ended up losing the game, but it kind of solidified, hey, they can play with anyone. LaNorris Sellers is really good and can be, a great defense in the SEC. The defense is good enough to disrupt whoever they're playing against. And that was the moment to me where it was like, okay, they didn't win this time, but man, this team seems to be on the right track. I did not anticipate them, winning 6 in a row just because to that point they'd been so inconsistent. They had Clemson on the schedule, Missouri, Texas A&M, but you knew at least they were starting to figure things out. LaNorris Sellers were getting more confident, and they were a team that was going to play with just about every team in the SEC.
To me, LaNorris Sellers, one of the most improved players in college football as a whole from what we saw from him at the beginning of the year and just kind of the progression we saw all the way to the end of the season. Talk about what you saw from LaNorris Sellers, him getting this role as a starting quarterback, and really by the end of the season, you could tell he was taking advantage of it.
Yeah, he was just so much more sure of himself. When the pocket would break down early in the season, he would try and still throw the ball, or he would just take the sack. And it was so hard for the coaches because he had a fumbling problem. I mean, heading into that Alabama game, he had fumbled the ball more than anyone in the country. And so the coaches were like, what do you say to him? You want him to obviously still be the guy who can run and make plays happen, but he's hurting the team with the fumbles. And somehow he just struck this balance of not making dumb plays, but also getting out of sacks and running and being elusive and just being great for his team without fumbling the ball as much. It's really hard to describe what changed, because it's not like he was a little more decisive, but I don't know. He just somehow got out of these sacks. And that's the hard part, because it's, his stats could have looked a lot worse if he was sacked, 12 more times and didn't have all these rushing yards. But somehow he had so many of the Houdini plays that you're kind of looking at it I don't really know if that's a coaching point or anything. It's just he did it. That's it's kind of so odd about it.
We'll continue talking South Carolina football right after we tell you about our friends at BetOnline. They continue to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting, from the earliest odds to in-game live betting. BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL to UFC. Head over to the BetOnline today. Don't forget promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. The defense for South Carolina this year, they were so much fun to watch. They just wreaked havoc on some of their opponents, especially in the pass rush. Talk about what you saw from specifically those guys up front, and really, especially towards the end of the season. I mean, Kyle Kennard, these guys, they were creating all kinds of problems.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Kennard, the Georgia Tech transfer, on one side of the edge, Dylan Stewart, the 5-star freshman, on the other side. I mean, they combined for almost 20 sacks and, probably almost 30 tackles for loss when you go back. Just so dominant. I don't think you can overstate, though, how much it helped having guys in the middle at defensive tackle, 3 veterans, TJ Sanders, Tonka Hemingway, and Alex Huntley, just creating so much havoc in the middle. And they're so good that you can't really double team Kennard or Stewart, or if you try and double team them, then it's, hey, one of the guys in the middle comes through. So there was never a recipe to beat South Carolina, because they had so many weapons. And then when you've got the solid linebackers behind them, headlined by Demetrius Knight, a Charlotte transfer who made himself a ton of money this year, the way he played at South Carolina. He was so good in pursuit that South Carolina could almost just funnel guys, or someone broke outside. It was like, hey, Knight's right there. He's going to get the angle and take him down. But yeah, that defensive line, you kind of look at it, and when you're thinking about next year, it's a little scary for South Carolina, because it's like, okay, Kennard's gone. Sanders might go to the draft. Hemingway's gone. Sanders is gone. It's like, okay, you're left with Dylan Stewart, basically, of those guys. And, do you trust the depth behind them? Are you going to have to go in the portal and grab, a couple more guys? They've already started to do that, but they were incredible this year. You could probably make the argument Stewart and Kennard were the best defensive end duo in the country.
Yeah, for sure. And they were incredible. As far as Shane Beamer goes, talk about the coaching job you feel like he did this season. I mean, he's been kind of building this thing up at South Carolina, and you mentioned the guys he was able to bring in out of the portal. Let's talk about the job that Shane Beamer did this year.
Yeah, he came into this year coming off the 5-7 season. I think there were some that thought he might be on the hot seat, but it was more of, hey, he's probably a year away from being a year away. He needed to have a big bounce back season this year. He needed to kind of show proof of concept, because in 3 seasons, he had gone to a bowl twice. He had 1 9-win season, but then, follows it up by missing a bowl. He needed to show something. And a lot of that came from trusting LaNorris Sellers with the offense, not going out and trying to make a splash in the portal by signing some guy who had started or whatever and was dropping down. I think the other thing, when you talk about his coaching, first of all, just keeping his team motivated and understanding like the vision. I mean, there would have been some easy times to tap out after that Ole Miss game, after the bye, after the LSU loss with that ref situation. Would have been very easy for him to tap out. But I think when you just look at his overall body of work, what he did in the transfer portal by getting like 22 guys and turning a lot of them into day one starters, that's the thing to me this year, where that's what separated him from, his team from going 6-6 and 9-3. He hit in the portal so well. It's a bit scary because, like, can you do that every year? Can you go in the portal and hit it like a 50% clip every year? And, all those guys are starters? Like, probably not. But it shows that him and his staff were able to identify the prospects they like, not care where they came from, not care what other offers they had, and then go all in on them. Torricelli Simpkins was like from NC Central. Kyle Kennard, not a million people were after him. Demetrius Knight, not a lot of people wanted him out of Charlotte. I mean, these are all guys that were major players for South Carolina that Shane Beamer identified, trusted, and signed. And, I think that's the big thing for him as a coach.
South Carolina meets up with Illinois in the Citrus Bowl. What, when you look at this matchup, where do you see maybe South Carolina some strengths as they go into this matchup with Illinois?
Yeah, I mean, Illinois got their top receiver who opted out, and so that's going to be a thing. I would imagine they're going to run the ball a little bit more, and with that great defensive front, they've got Kennard opted out too, but there's still so much talent that I think South Carolina's got an edge there. Illinois does have a pretty solid defense, though. Without Rocket Sanders for South Carolina, there's going to be a lot more on LaNorris Sellers, whether to run or, probably have to get involved through the air. Will also be interesting, like what other running backs step up without Sanders. I just think it's like these are 2 9-3 teams. They both lost to basically like, 2 similar, like Illinois had losses to 2 playoff teams. South Carolina had 3 losses, all the really good SEC teams. They're very similar. I think South Carolina's had a tougher strength of schedule this season, shown more, had better wins. So I think the edge goes to South Carolina heading into it.
And obviously South Carolina, and like every team, you want to be in the playoff, and South Carolina saw maybe a path to get there. What do you see the vibe around the program right now heading into the Citrus Bowl?
I think part of this is goes back to your question of Shane Beamer as a coach. Yeah, it would have been interesting. And he set the tone right away. Like, we are not going to be Florida State from last year that had 14 people opt out and lose by 60 to Georgia. Like, that is not going to be us. He's really made it a point of being like, the program you play for has only won 10 games 4 times. You have a chance to do that. And if you do that, you're going to go down as one of the historic teams at this school. And that's a nice carrot to dangle in front. I think that's why this matchup is so intriguing in the day and era where Bulls are a little silly and can kind of seem like a ridiculous matchup with all the opt-outs and transfer. It's like, hey, these are 2 teams that historically are not like competing for, conference titles or national titles. And they both have a chance to win 10 games, which both programs have not done very often. So there's only 3 total opt-outs. That's pretty remarkable. And Shane Beamer has dangled that thing saying, hey, go get the 10th win. And I think they've bought in.
It'll be fun. South Carolina, Illinois in the Citrus Bowl. Jordan Kaye covers the Gamecocks for the state newspaper. Jordan, really appreciate you coming on today, talking some South Carolina football. We will definitely chat with you again soon. Enjoy the final game of the season, and we'll catch up again. But thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Chase. Appreciate you.
We are Southeastern 16, and we are brought to you by BetOnline.